You hear the shrill, furious knocking before you see her. Knock, knock, knock. It's not a friendly greeting. It's an assault. And that voice, piercing and laced with self-importance, already knows my name. Mr. Harrison, I know you're in there. I have a warrant here from the HOA, and you are in direct violation of Section 7. Subclause B. The words bleed through the thick oak of the front door. A cacophony of entitlement and righteous indignation. What in the actual hell? I had a beautiful, quiet Saturday morning planned. My wife, the anchor of my chaotic life, was on her way home from her night shift, and our little girl was happily coloring in the living room. Now, a storm was brewing on my doorstep, and her name, of course, was Karen. You have no right to a warrant. Karen, you're the HOA president, not a judge. I shout back, my voice vibrating with a frustration so deep it felt like a physical weight in my chest. This is a fire hazard. That planter is 3 inches too close to the property line. I have photos. I have documentation. She screamed, her voice cracking with fury. And now I've called the police. You'll be forced to let me in. You pathetic rule breaker. My blood ran cold. The police. For a planter. I peered through the peephole, and there she was. A caricature of her own rage. Phone still to her ear. A triumphant smirk on her face. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew this was insane. But what if they actually came? What if they actually let this person into my home? The thought of that sent a jolt of primal fear through me. Just then, I saw the flashing blue and red lights through my window, painting the quiet street in a surreal, pulsating rhythm. My stomach dropped. This was really happening. I unlatched the deadbolt. The metallic click echoing in the sudden silence as Karen lowered her phone. She stood there, arms crossed, chin tilted up, the self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac. A patrol car pulled to a stop at the curb, its doors opening with a soft thud. 2 officers emerged. My breath hitched. This was my worst nightmare coming true. I was about to be humiliated in front of my neighbors. All because of an absurd planter. Officers, thank you so much for coming. Karen's voice was sickeningly sweet now, dripping with false concern. This gentleman is refusing to comply with a legitimate HOA request and has a dangerous fire hazard on his property. I opened the door wider, ready to defend myself. My daughter's coloring book forgotten on the floor. I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to plead for sanity. And then my words froze. My gaze, fixed on the approaching officers, widened, my eyes locking on the familiar, powerful figure walking with a confident stride toward my porch. My wife. My beautiful, strong, incredible wife. She was wearing her uniform. Good morning, ma'am, my wife said, her voice a calm, professional baritone that sliced through the tension. It was the same voice I'd fallen in love with, but with a different kind of authority now. You're the one who called this in. Karen's mouth, agape, snapped shut. Her triumphant posture faltered, her smug smirk twisting into a look of panicked confusion. Officer, Elia, she stammered, her voice a reedy whisper. She looked at me, then at my wife, then back to me, the color draining from her face. I saw her mind racing, her carefully constructed narrative crumbling. I saw the moment she realized she hadn't just called the cops on a neighbor. She'd called them on a cop. My wife's partner, a young officer whose name I didn't know, held back a grin, his eyes twinkling with suppressed amusement. He had to know. That's my husband, my wife stated, her gaze unwavering as she looked at Karen. And this is my home. The silence was thick, punctuated only by the distant chirp of a bird and my own shaky exhale. Oh, I had no idea. Karen fumbled, her bravado completely gone, replaced by a desperate, sputtering apology. I saw the planter and I thought it was a violation, and he wouldn't let me in to measure it. And her words trailed off. A pathetic, rambling mess. You called the police because you wanted to enter a private residence without permission. For a planter, my wife asked, her tone even, but with an edge of steel I knew all too well. That's not what I said. It's a fire hazard. The bylaws state. The bylaws are not state law. Ma'am. My wife interrupted smoothly. And an HOA request does not give you legal authority to enter a private home. In fact, if my husband had let you in and you'd been injured, you would be liable. And if he had refused and you'd persisted, that could be seen as harassment. The words hit Karen like a physical blow. She staggered back a step, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror. The bylaws clearly state that planters must be no closer than 36 inches to the property line. Karen shrieked, finding a sliver of her former self-righteousness. I have the tape measure right here. She brandished a small, retractable tape measure as if it were a scepter. My wife, never one to be ruffled, simply raised an eyebrow. Is that so? She said, turning to her partner. Officer Miller, would you mind taking a measurement for us? Just to put the lady's mind at ease. Officer Miller, struggling to maintain his composure, pulled a police-issued tape measure from his belt. He knelt down, extended the tape, and announced, looks like it's exactly 42 inches. Sergeant Harrison. My wife nodded slowly, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. 42 inches. She repeated, her eyes fixed on Karen, well within the required parameters. Do you see the problem here? Ma'am. The blood rushed back to Karen's face. But this time it was a deep, burning red of humiliation. Her tape measure, once her badge of authority, now felt like a worthless toy. The other neighbors, drawn by the siren, were now peering from behind their curtains and peeking from their front doors. They had seen it all. They had seen Karen, the terror of the neighborhood, finally get her comeuppance. I could almost hear the collective sigh of relief. But the story wasn't over. Karen, in her desperation, tried one last gambit. But there's the trim. It's the wrong color. It's supposed to be Benjamin Moore whispering pine, not evergreen haze. That's a clear violation. This is all because of the trim. My wife just sighed. It was a deep, tired sigh that held a world of patience for a petty world. I believe you'll find, if you check your own records, that the HOA board approved a new list of acceptable paint colors last month. Evergreen haze is on it. I voted for it. The final piece of Karen's flimsy castle of rules and regulations had just been vaporized. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of defeat, disbelief, and incandescent rage. She had been so busy persecuting everyone else. She hadn't bothered to read the new rules herself. She had become the very thing she policed. So, in summary, ma'am, my wife said, her voice now a firm finality. You called the police to a private residence, falsely reported a fire hazard, and accused a resident of a bylaw violation that doesn't exist, all while harassing my family. I'm going to have to ask you to return to your home and refrain from any further contact with my husband or my family. And as for your position as HOA president, I suggest you reread the board's bylaws on abuse of power. Have a nice day. She didn't wait for a response. She simply turned, gave me a quick, gentle squeeze on the arm, a silent, I got you, and walked back to her cruiser with Officer Miller. The engine hummed to life, and the patrol car pulled away, leaving Karen standing alone on the curb, a defeated monument to her own arrogance. I watched her, my own feelings a confusing mix of relief, fury, and a strange sort of pity. Her power, her carefully cultivated aura of authority, had just been publicly and spectacularly shattered. She wasn't a queen anymore. She was just Karen. I closed the door, my heart still racing, but a genuine smile finally found its way to my face. The house was quiet again. My daughter was still coloring. My wife was a superhero. The world, for the moment, felt right again. Standing up to a bully, it turns out, is a lot easier when your wife is the one with the badge. It makes you wonder, though, doesn't it? Who was really right or wrong here? Where's the line between enforcing rules and abusing power? I'd love to hear what you think.